Welcome back, horror fans, cinephiles, and giallo enthusiasts. This is Tanner Leeser, your host for all things giallo here on The King in Giallo. We are continuing our coverage for the second giallo film from Emilio Paolo Miraglia, The Red Queen Kills 7 Times, released on August 18th, 1972. In this video, I will give you a condensed version of the full-length overview video, covering only the cast and crew and the plot of the movie. Then I'll transition into the GialliTally. The GialliTally will contain heavy spoilers. Here is The Red Queen Kills 7 Times overview. The Red Queen Kills 7 Times, also called Cry of a Prostitute, Love Kills, The Lady in Red Kills 7 Times, Blood Feast, and Feast of Flesh, is an Italian and West German co-production. The film is directed by Emilio Paolo Miraglia, who also co-wrote it along with Fabio Pittorru. Music is composed by Bruno Nicolai. The cast is comprised of Barbara Bouchet as Kitty Wildenbrück, Ugo Pagliai as Martin Hoffmann, Marina Malfatti as Franziska Wildenbrück, Marino Masé as the police inspector, Sybil Danning as Lulu Palm, and Rudolf Schundler as Tobias Wildenbrück. The plot follows Kitty and her sister Evelyn, who grew up haunted by a grim family legend. Every 100 years, a vengeful figure known as the Red Queen returns from the grave to claim 7 lives, 6 seemingly random victims, followed by the reincarnation of her sister, the Black Queen. The tale becomes all too real when, years later, their grandfather Tobias dies suddenly, and a masked killer in a red cloak begins a violent spree across Kitty's social and professional circle. Evelyn, believed to have died under mysterious circumstances years earlier, is soon suspected to be alive and possibly responsible for the murders. Kitty, plagued by guilt and secrets, finds herself increasingly isolated as suspicion closes in around her. Tensions rise when her lover, Martin Hoffmann, is implicated following the murder of his boss, and questions swirl about who truly stands to benefit from Tobias's estate. As bodies continue to fall and the killer closes in on the supposed reincarnation of the Black Queen, Kitty must confront her past and the horrifying possibility that the Red Queen legend may be more than just myth. But I digress. On to the GialliTally. Spoilers ahead for those of you who haven't yet seen the film. You've been warned. My prediction for the movie's GialliTally score. In my unscripted review video, I predicted around 675 to 725 points. Well, let's begin the GialliTally portion of the video, beginning as always with the previewing cliches. Real quick, it's come to my attention that the repeat offenders for this might be a little off because one of the next movies I'm going to cover actually came out before this movie. I messed that up because there's 2 different Italian release dates for that movie. The one that I was going off of was August 19th, which is the day after The Red Queen Kills 7 Times came out, but the first release in Italy was actually a week before on August 11th. The repeat offenders are 1 point for actor, 3 for writer, 3 for composer, and 5 for director. Barbara Bouchet was in The French Sex Murders, Smile Before Death, Amok, The Black Belly of the Tarantula, and The Man with Icy Eyes. 5 points. Marina Malfatti was in All the Colors of the Dark, 7 Blood-Stained Orchids, The Night Evelyn Came Out of the Grave, The Fourth Victim, and Run Psycho Run. 5 points. Sybil Danning was in Eye of the Labyrinth. 1 point. Fabrizio Moresco was in So Sweet, So Dead and Death Walks on High Heels. 2 points. Carla Mancini, for all of her prior appearances, gets 10 points. Bruno Bertocchi was in The Dead Are Alive and Naked Violence. 2 points. Dolores Calot was in The Case of the Bloody Iris. 1 point. And in terms of background actors, I have Sisto Brunetti, Nestore Cavaricchi, Silverio Conti, Alfonso Giganti, and Romano Targa, who I'm not going to count them for their work here or in prior giallo films, as it seems to be mostly background with no spoken lines. I will shout them out though, but I'm not going to count them. But if you're interested, Sisto Brunetti would get 2 points, Nestore Cavaricci would get 3 points, Silverio Conti would get 2 points, Alfonso Giganti would get 6 points, and Romano Targa would get 2 points. Moving on though. Fabio Pittorru wrote The Night Evelyn Came Out of the Grave and The Weekend Murders, 6 points. Emilio Miraglia wrote The Night Evelyn Came Out of the Grave, 3 points. Bruno Nicolai composed Your Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Have the Key, The Case of the Bloody Iris, The French Sex Murders, All the Colors of the Dark, The Night Evelyn Came Out of the Grave, and The Case of the Scorpion's Tail, 18 points. And Emilio Miraglia directed The Night Evelyn Came Out of the Grave, 5 points. Cliché points for the title, The Red Queen Kills 7 Times. Contains a color, red, 5 points. Contains the word kills, 5 points. Contains a number, 7, 5 points. First look, 25 points for the Italian director, 15 points for the movie releasing during the golden age of giallo cinema, and I'll say 15 points for this being a quintessential giallo film. And would you look at that? It is plot o'clock. No clever joke here, but we have a cold open, 5 points. C is for children, 5 points. We meet 2 sisters, Kitty and Evelyn. The latter is a little shit who is always antagonizing her sister. She snatches her sister's doll and runs. Kitty pursues. Foot chase, 5 points.
Bring her back! She's my doll!
Y is for yelling, 5 points. They run inside the castle and their grandfather has to break it up. Evelyn seems possessed by an ominous painting of 2 women as she claims to be the Red Queen. Art featured, extra points for it being central to the plot, 10 points. Z is for zoom, 5 points. Evelyn repeats that she's the Red Queen and Kitty the Black. She grabs a dagger and stabs the doll repeatedly. K is for knives, 5 points. Evelyn rips the doll's head off and the 2 fight. The grandfather rolls his wheelchair over the dagger and orders them to stop. This is some terrible writing right here.
I'm sorry, Grandfather, I didn't want to do it, but whenever I look at that picture, I go all funny inside.
You know, you've really never explained the story to us.
They just move on. Yeah, that seems totally natural. Great segue. Evelyn claims that she doesn't know what came over her, saying the painting did it to her. The girls ask about the painting, and their grandfather relays to them the legend of the Red and Black Queens. He expresses that he wished he could have avoided telling them about it, but relents that the time has come. As if this is the birds and bees discussion. In essence, the 2 were sisters, and the Black Queen had had enough of her sister, the Red Queen, and all of her wicked schemes, and one night she stabbed her 7 times to death in her sleep. A year later, the Red Queen returned and killed 6 innocents, and finally, the Black Queen. The killing stopped, but the spirit of the Red Queen returns every 100 years to claim 7 more lives, the final of which always being the spirit of the Black Queen, and always in this castle, and always 2 sisters. He claims it's all a legend, but states that in 14 years' time, in 1972, the murders would be scheduled to pick up once again. Exposition dumping, 2 points. He orders the painting be destroyed. We get the title sequence with a montage of Evelyn tormenting Kitty. Foreign locales. This is either Würzburg or Weikersheim in Germany. 5 points. 14 years later, we see that the grandfather, Tobias, is looked after by one of his other granddaughters, Franziska, played by Marina Malfatti. He claims Kitty never visits, and he hasn't heard from Evelyn in years. Franziska says Evelyn is in America. Nightfall. E is for eyeballs. 5 points. Tobias hears someone prowling through the castle, approaching his bedchamber. A figure in a red cloak stalks forward. Tobias sees a knife, calls out to Franziska, but succumbs to a heart attack and dies. First person POV, 5 points. The killer's identity is hidden due to the framing and editing, 2 points. Franziska calls out to her husband, Herbert, who is not in bed. Outside, she hears crazed cackling as we see the killer flee from the castle. Kitty receives the news over the telephone. T is for telephone, 5 points. I'm going to count this wake as a funeral. Funeral scene. Extra points if a character learns new information. 5 points. Franziska tells Kitty how she found their grandfather dead from a heart attack. We drop in on Kitty, Franziska, and Herbert gathered and discussing their imminent inheritance. Herbert laments how Kitty will receive the majority of the estate because she was always the favorite, but she states that she doesn't need or want it, and she plans to remain at her job regardless. Herbert mentions seeing the Red Queen last night. Franziska tells Kitty that Herbert claims to have seen the Red Queen and heard her laughing, as did she, but most disturbing of all is that the Red Queen had Evelyn's face. We see a flashback of Kitty and Evelyn fighting, the result of which is Evelyn getting smacked, falling back, and being knocked unconscious before falling into the water. The image of Evelyn in the water mirrors the painting Ophelia. It seems that only Kitty, Franziska, and Herbert know that Evelyn is dead. Urban locales, 2 points. Kitty arrives at work, Springe, an haute couture fashion house. Kitty is a fashion photographer. F is for fashion, extra points for a character working in fashion, 10 points. This is Rosemary and Lenora. Rosemary points out how Kitty is having an affair with this man, Martin, whose wife is currently in an asylum. I is for infidelity, 5 points. In the car, Kitty tells Martin that Evelyn won't be here for the reading of the will because she's in America somewhere. L is for lies, 5 points. She asks why he's so nosy about Evelyn, and he asks why she's so defensive about the subject, pointing out how months ago she couldn't stop talking about her. I want you to remember that, because that implies that she died months ago. The final will and testament states that the estate will not be divided up until next year, at which time the 3 granddaughters will find out how the estate shall be split between them. Kitty says what difference does it make if they receive the money now or next year, and Franziska adds that they've got more time in terms of Evelyn, who, again, is implied to have died months ago. Kitty is attacked by this young man who seems to be madly in love with Evelyn. He demands to know what happened to her, refusing to believe that she moved to America. He threatens to kill Kitty before eventually admitting that he cares more about the money and demands that Kitty pay him. She agrees. Martin meets with his boss, Hans Mayer, who runs Springe. Hans is upset with the direction of Martin's publicity campaign for the company, which favors the appeal of the wealthy clients over the common clients. Hans says that Springe is for all of Germany, not just the elites. J is for J&B, 5 points. Hans remarks that Martin won't make it in Springe with that mindset as long as he is in charge. Kitty photographs this model, Lulu, played by Sybil Danning. Martin speaks with Lulu in the dressing room. N is for nudity, 5 points. Martin asks if Kitty is in, and Lulu teases him, stating that Kitty is a lousy lay. Martin doesn't seem interested and remarks that if he were running the show, he wouldn't allow whores to work here. Lulu asks about his wife in the asylum and what she thinks of his mistress, Kitty. Cut to Hans out among the night walkers. We watch as the Red Queen strolls through. Suddenly, Hans is brutally stabbed repeatedly. Extra points for K is for knives, for the knife being bloodied, 5 more points. G is for gloves. Extra points for them being black, 10 points. U is for undercover, 5 points. Lulu and a few of the prostitutes run to Hans's aid, but the damage is already done and the Red Queen flees. W is for witness, 5 points. Extra points for Y is for yelling, for a hysterical woman yelling, 5 more points. Lulu is relaying this story to the police now. Inspector Toller asks her what happened. Q is for questions, 5 points. In a flashback, we watch as Lulu rode with Hans, searching for a girl to join them in the bedroom. I'm going to add queer character for their sexual shenanigans, but take it easy. 5 points. Lulu was his mistress, and he was always eager to liven things up. Lulu shares how Martin said that she was a whore who only works as a model because of her relationship with Hans. They find a girl, and Lulu goes to proposition her for a 3-way. The sex worker confirms this with Inspector Toller and goes on to describe the Red Queen, dressed in a red cape with long black hair. Inspector Toller questions Martin Hoffmann now, who states that Springe will be closed for 1 day of mourning, then will be back to business as usual. He's asked if he's now the acting GM, and Martin, knowing suspicion would fall on him, remarks on this. Toller asks if Martin and Hans had problems, and follows it up by asking if Martin had problems with Lulu. He's called out for threatening to fire Lulu once he was a general manager. We find Rosemary alone, overlooking drafts made by Hans before his death. Kitty comes in, and the two talk about the company, with Rosemary relaying how Hans had declared that without him, this company would fall apart. The women join the police to observe the identikit of the suspect observed at the crime scene. Toller says it was a woman, but this could just as easily be a man with contact lenses and a wig. Toller notices Kitty's surprise at the picture, asks her if the face is familiar, but she lies and says it is not. Thaler asks Rosemary if the picture looks familiar, seeing as how she was Hans's previous mistress the year prior. She also says no. Next, Lulu also says that the semblance is unfamiliar. Thaler and the police exit. Martin and the board of directors talk business. This model, Leonora, says to Kitty that the identikit looks like Evelyn, but Kitty rejects this theory. The other three women look suspiciously at Kitty as she reaffirms that Evelyn left without announcement to America. Later at home, Kitty notices someone outside the window on the street looking inside. They're gone. Kitty plays back her voicemails and discovers a message from a voice claiming to be Evelyn. Audio recording device, 5 points. The voice threatens to murder Kitty, then cackles. Later in the car, Martin reveals that Hans was actually a genius at running this company, and Martin had misunderstood his leadership. He admits that he is the one person who had the most to gain from Hans's death. At the castle, Kitty walks by as the others discuss business, mentioning how Kitty should buy up shares in Springa. She grabs a flashlight and proceeds down into the crypts. The place is dark and dank and inhabited with bats. Kitty scares herself and runs to flee, but runs into Franziska. Franziska expresses knowing that Kitty would come down here, and she admits that she needs to see for herself that Evelyn's body is still hidden down here. The two walk to go see Evelyn's body, while Kitty reports how Evelyn has been seen dressed as the Red Queen. Animals featured, rats, 2 points. Franziska opens up a door, which reveals Evelyn's decaying body. Extra points for Z is for a zoom on a dead body. 5 more points. Kitty says aloud that Martin must have killed Hans, but behind the next door, the women find the red cloak of the Red Queen. Later on, we watch as the blackmailer, Peter, spies on Martin and Kitty. Peter sneaks around the property to get a closer look. Inside, Martin asks Kitty if she is hiding anything from him about the investigation. She says that she's already told Thaler everything, and once Evelyn is apprehended, then that will be that. The two lament their situation of not trusting one another, but Martin assures Kitty that they will get through it and everything will be fine. We cut to a montage of Kitty photographing the models. Someone watches them from the bushes. Extra points for Z is for a zoom on eyes. 5 more points. Lulu tells Rosemary that despite Martin taking over, she will not be resigning, but instead plans to keep her position by resuming her role she'd had with Hans, aka sleeping with the general manager. Lenora approaches Kitty and says that they must talk. It is about the Red Queen and who she really is. They are being watched by someone, presumably the Red Queen herself. They agree to talk soon. But as soon as Lenora hops into the back of this van, the door swings shut and she is trapped inside as the killer drives her away. Leonora is driven out of town. Reckless driving, 5 points. In a grassy field, Leonora is stabbed repeatedly in the van where she dies. The police storm the field and discover the body in the van. R is for reporter, 5 points. I think it is an odd choice to have this parade of onlookers here, as if this occurred in the middle of like a bustling street and not a secluded field in the middle of nowhere. Must be a lot of people listening in on police scanners, I suppose. Thaler breaks up all the looky-loos. Martin arrives. Thaler hops into Martin's car to question him. He asks where Martin was around the time of the murder, and he says he was in a board meeting with 18 other people. A is for alibi, 5 points. Thaler confirms with Martin that Leonora was a close friend of Martin's wife in the institution. Martin goes to Kitty, who is anxious of the circumstances of Lenora being killed moments after wanting to speak with her about the killer. Martin says that Lenora had said the identikit looked like Evelyn, but again, Kitty rejects this. Martin now speaks with his wife, Elizabeth, who states that she remembers him, implying that she's like really crazy. He asks her about the woman Elizabeth had claimed last week was visiting her. She recalls, saying that she climbs over the gate and the women run off together. She says Evelyn liberates her, that she'll run off with her again, and that she'd told her about Martin's affairs. Lastly, she says that Evelyn promised to bring her a knife so that she could kill her lecherous husband. Martin walks and talks with Elizabeth's doctor now, relaying the story to him. And he says that the drugs for her treatment are keeping her in a constant state of hallucinations. Martin asks for the doctor to keep a close eye over Elizabeth. Later, Martin answers the phone at home, but no one is there. He checks outside his apartment. The doorbell rings. Outside is a woman in a red veil. It is Lulu who walks in. She says that Inspector Thaler was with her an hour ago and had all but accused her and Martin of conspiring to kill Hans together, and how the events in the park were orchestrated so she'd have an alibi then, and the events in the field were orchestrated so Martin would have an alibi. The reason Thaler suspects their involvement is because Lulu is Martin's mistress now, but Martin asserts that the two are not involved, so that theory shouldn't hold up. Lulu retorts that she wants to be Martin's mistress, though. He can still have his loony wife and Kitty as his lover, but she will be his mistress. She is now completely nude before him, and he begins to relent. She tries to put the moves on him, but he points out a necklace she has, which he's never seen her wear. She says it is only for special occasions, and she says a friend gave it to her. They get down to the devil's business. Necking 5 points. On her way out, Lulu notices Rosemary arrive. We cut to Elizabeth running through the trees. She approaches the gate surrounding the asylum as Evelyn's voice tells her to climb over. A rope ladder hangs over the fence. Elizabeth wants the knife, is given it, then proceeds up the ladder, but once she's above the spikes, the Red Queen cuts the rope and Elizabeth drops down onto them, impaling her through the jowls. The Red Queen retrieves the knife and drives away in a light-colored Volkswagen, which we have seen very recently, moments ago, in fact. The asylum staff get Elizabeth down, who dies while groaning, "Evelyn." Tuller speaks with Martin, referencing Martin's previous discussion with the doctor about how Elizabeth had claimed to be visited nightly by Evelyn. Tuller informs Martin that his wife had drawn up a will last month with everything going to the mental health research institution. Tuller claims this is a good motive for Martin to murder his wife. Tuller follows it up by saying that Martin knew that his wife was progressing and her being killed now can technically reverse the will on the grounds of her being ruled not in a sound mind when she drafted it. Martin will likely inherit everything of hers. Lenora's name was also in the will. Rosemary is brought in for questioning now. She doesn't understand why her, but Tuller plays a recording of a phone call they'd received with a woman's voice telling them to question Rosemary. She says she doesn't recognize the voice. She says she was home alone last night, but did make a call and leave a message for Kitty about postponing a work meeting. She admits to Tuller that she'd resigned as Martin's secretary over disagreements about managing Springer. Tuller warns that Rosemary could be one of the next victims. Lastly, Tuller asks Rosemary if she knows Evelyn. Rosemary goes to speak with Kitty, remarking that before Elizabeth's death, she'd mentioned Evelyn. Kitty is intercepted by Martin outside, who commands that she must talk to the police about Evelyn's likeness in the identikit. He demands she must, or else he'll continue to be accused of these murders. She asserts it isn't possible that Evelyn is responsible. Extra points for J is for J and B being drunk. 5 more points. She's asked again why she won't tell the police, and Kitty finally admits the truth. Evelyn is dead. Kitty had accidentally killed her. In the flashback, we see that immediately after Evelyn had fallen into the water, Kitty had called out to Franziska and Herbert. Kitty tells Martin that Franziska and Herbert helped cover up the murder because everyone had known that Evelyn and Kitty hated each other and she would surely have been arrested. S is for secrets, 5 points. Kitty breaks down, saying that it's all true, the legend of the Black and Red Queens, how she will surely die last because she is the Black Queen. Martin comforts her. We then get a nightmare sequence where the Red Queen runs down a long hallway to Kitty, sleeping. Kitty dreams Evelyn standing over her body and stabbing her with a dagger before she wakes up. The door buzzes. Peter barges in. Peter says he's learned everything and he's come for Evelyn's share of the estate in order for him to remain silent to the police. Kitty pays Peter, but in her vulnerable state, Peter becomes incensed and attacks her, ripping her clothes off. Typical 1970s Italian misogyny, woman is assaulted, 7 points. We cut away, but come back after to see the toll the assault has taken on Kitty. Martin speaks with the doctor about his wife's murder, who assures him that there was no negligence on their part. Martin apologizes, saying he's not looking for a culprit. Martin asks if it is possible if the drugs could have caused her to become insane, and it is revealed to be possible. The doctor says that they have protected wealthy families for years by keeping their anonymity, such as with the Wildenbrücks. Martin asks if he means Kitty or Franziska, but the doctor cannot answer that question. Peter meets with Rosemary, saying, quote, "She says you're going too far, that Kitty doesn't have any more money, and expresses that he does not want to keep blackmailing her. He hands over drugs and states that this is the last time, then says he knows who the killer is from the last time he was tripping." He says Kitty won't pay any more until her inheritance can come through next year. Illicit drugs present, 3 points. Later, Peter intercepts Kitty, saying how he must speak with her, but she rips herself free and runs inside. And can you blame her? A car pulls up. We see a vignette of the Red Queen approaching the painting of the two queens. The dagger flashes. The car headlights flicker. Peter creeps out from hiding, and the car drives up. Inside is the Red Queen, who opens the passenger door and invites Peter in. He recognizes her as Evelyn and is surprised to see her, but she slams the door shut on his coat and drives off, dragging Peter on the road. He's dragged along the street and dashed upon the curb, where he dies. We see the Red Queen approaching the castle. Inside, Kitty and Franziska speak. Kitty is very anxious and is told that she must calm down. A butler relays that an electrician will be called tomorrow morning to restore the power. Herbert joins them and they sit for dinner. Herbert and Franziska invite Kitty to stay with them, but she is distracted by the Red Queen, who seems to pass by. She excuses herself and goes to follow the specter. Spiral staircase scene, extra if used in a chase. 7 points. I was torn on whether to count this as a chase, but she is following her, so sure. Herbert and Fran grab handheld lights and search for Kitty. Kitty finds a flashlight herself and continues following. The ceiling nearly caves in on her. The Red Queen taunts her, and Kitty follows her through a door, which is a trapdoor, in fact, which causes Kitty to temporarily transform into a mannequin and fall onto a stack of hay. Franziska finds Kitty in the hay as we watch the Red Queen return inside the castle. Inspector Toller watches Martin as he parks outside his apartment and goes inside. By the phone, Martin finds a smoldering cigarette. In the bedroom, he finds Kitty, still trembling. Martin greets her with a new watch, but she expresses her anxiety about knowing that Evelyn is dead for a fact, yet seeing the specter of the Red Queen. Supernatural elements? Or superstitious yokels? 2 points. He tries to assuage her fears. Kitty drops some items. Among them is a photograph of her and Evelyn when they were kids. Martin immediately recognizes Evelyn's necklace as the one Lulu was wearing. Odd clue, 5 points. Martin asks if Lulu was friends with Evelyn, but she denies this. Lulu is at home. Martin calls her, but she doesn't answer the phone. Martin, sensing danger, retrieves a pistol. He warns Kitty to not answer the door for anybody and leaves. Lulu hops off an elevator, enters into this room, and confronts the killer, warning that if they don't come to an agreement, that she will go to the police immediately. Well, this gets her shot. The Red Queen cackles, wipes the fingerprints off, and tosses the pistol down. The Red Queen calls Kitty and tells her to come over to Evelyn's place in Marktplatz. She says that Kitty should have a 4th key with her, which will unlock the house. In her purse, Kitty finds a 4th key on her ring. Kitty arrives at Marktplatz and goes upstairs. Herbert is here. Kitty finds Lulu's body and the phone off the receiver with a man's voice calling out. Kitty responds, and the voice declares that this is the police. Kitty goes to leave, but finds the police storming upstairs. We watch as Herbert is in the room, just as the police burst inside and apprehend him. Toller questions Herbert about Kitty being here moments ago, but he denies it. But this is overruled by Toller, informing him how Lulu had called the police to tell them that Kitty had shot her. Herbert asserts that this was a trap for Kitty. He reveals that he too was called here by the Red Queen. Toller claims that Evelyn is dead and Kitty killed her, but again, Herbert denies this. Toller points out that they looked into it and found that Evelyn never emigrated to the United States, and yet she disappeared without a word to anyone. He demands to know where her body is and declares that Kitty had the most to gain from her sister's death. Herbert admits that Evelyn is dead, but that it was an accident. Martin finds the sealed will, which is to be opened next year, but he cuts it open and reads the contents. Kitty senses herself being tailed while driving, but it seems to only be paranoia. Martin arrives back and looks for Kitty inside. Kitty arrives at the castle and follows a light. As Martin drives, we hear the will being read aloud in a voiceover in Tobias's voice, stating the estate will be divided equally among 4 parties. Kitty, who will also inherit the castle, Franziska, Rosemary, and Evelyn, whom he reveals is adopted in order to break the curse of the Red Queen. In the crypt, Kitty searches. She finds Evelyn's body in the same place, but hears a whimpering behind the next door. Inside, she finds the Red Queen, a woman behind a mask of Evelyn's semblance. She's been stabbed in the back, warns Kitty is next, and reveals her killer to be Franziska. The mask comes off, and the killer is revealed to be Rosemary. Hidden identity of the killer until the final moments, 5 points. The killer is killed by someone, 10 points. The accomplice is killed, 5 points. Suddenly, the door slams shut, trapping Kitty inside. Franziska crosses over to a wheel and closes a hatch, diverting the flow of water into the crypts. The crypt fills with rats, then a torrent of water. Kitty seeks higher ground. Franziska hops into Kitty's car just as Martin pulls up. He asks her where Kitty is, but she pretends that she's hurt. Martin tells her to cut the crap, that he knows everything now. He drags her from the car and displays the will, accusing Rosemary, Kitty's natural-born sister, of being the Red Queen. He declares that when they were little girls, Tobias had Rosemary switched with the girl who would come to be known as Evelyn in order to break the family curse, that the girl who became Evelyn was a daughter of poor peasants. It's all written in the sealed will. Franziska begins to act crazy and confesses to her wickedness and how she coveted everything. In a flashback, we discover that Evelyn did not in fact die in the water, and that Franziska had gone to pull her out, but seizing her opportunity to inherit more if she didn't need to split part of it with Evelyn, Franziska killed her by dashing her head upon the cobblestones. She confesses to learning about the secrets within the will, as well as herself tracking down Rosemary Müller and arranging to get her hired at Springe. With Peter's help, Franziska got Rosemary hooked on drugs, where she'd become susceptible to being influenced by stories of the Red Queen legend. Her, Peter, and Rosemary were blackmailing Kitty, and Rosemary, under the influence of drugs, had killed all of their victims. Franziska killed Rosemary because she was beginning to falter with her own madness. Meanwhile, Kitty struggles in the rising water. Franziska asks Martin to come to some sort of agreement with her, but he backhands her. Typical 1970s Italian misogyny, woman is slapped, 5 points. He draws the gun on her and demands to know where Kitty is. Herbert arrives and hobbles over. Franziska says her and Martin shall be partners in this, since she had helped to pin the murders onto Herbert. Franziska doesn't see him and laments her time living with Herbert and calls him a lame cripple. Unbeknownst to her, Herbert overhears this and shoots her. Martin falls to Franziska, still seeking answers, but she stabs him before dying. Martin begs Herbert for help finding Kitty, and Herbert announces that there is a secret crypt hidden behind a rock slab. They go at once to rescue her. Martin manages to contact the police and summon them to the castle. Through some odd editing, we see the police attempting to unleash the waters, Herbert setting his eyes on a mounted sword, seemingly, and Barbara Bouchet trying to convincingly act as if she's treading water. The slab is opened, and a torrent of water cascades forth. The water flows out. Not sure if this is supposed to be a person or is an armor stand. Herbert seemingly has drowned or something. Kitty plops out from the opening. She is saved. Herbert and Franziska are announced dead, and Kitty rides with Martin in the ambulance. I'm not sure if this is something that old European ambulances do, or if this is the production team trying to make this van appear to be the real deal, but I love how the headlights are just flashing on and off. The movie ends there. Let's add up some final cliches. Extra points for S's for secrets, for the killer having an impossible to predict motivation. 5 more points. O is for obsession. Extra points for the killer being obsessed. 10 points. Extra points for L is for lies, for the killer lying about their alibi. 5 more points. And extra points for T is for telephone, for the killer making a call. 5 more points. And that's The Red Queen Kills 7 Times. Okay, so, yeah, I do really like this movie. It took me a while to get into it. I actually had to rewatch it a few times, which is a little embarrassing, but I think I was going into it thinking it was going to be a gothic giallo similar to Your Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Have the Key, and we were going to spend the majority of the time in the castle, people coming and going, and that's not. It's closer to, in a way, Blood and Black Lace and the whole haute couture element with the fashion house. So I do enjoy the movie. I easily enjoy it more than The Night Evelyn Came Out of the Grave in terms of Emilio P. Miraglia's other giallo film. And so the thing I want to talk about, I think this is one of those giallo film scripts that is a little overly convoluted by the end, and we get a few more reveals than we really needed, and it feels like we're getting those extra reveals for the sake of, oh, I bet you didn't think that's what was going to happen. And I don't really like that. I can be very forgiving with it when it happens, but in terms of really, really loving a giallo in the long run, it is something that always will kind of hurt it if I feel like they're just adding on reveal and twist after twist to just kind of shake up what the audience was thinking. And so what do I mean by that? Well, do we really need Franziska going crazy? And I mean, first off, the reveal that the other sister was adopted. Yeah, like, okay, that's interesting. And then Rosemary was the actual natural born sister. Okay. And then Franziska went crazy and killed the fake sister Evelyn, and then she found the actual sister Rosemary. And remember when I said to remember the fact that it seems to imply that she died months ago? That is a discrepancy, I believe, because she finds Rosemary and somehow gets her a job at Springa, and there we know she's been there for over a year, because they implied that she in the previous year was having relations with either Hansmer or Martin Hoffmann, maybe both. When she's being interrogated, she does have to admit that she was his previous girl when he would be going out prowling for, another prostitute to join them in the bedroom. And then I think it was also implied that she was with Martin, but maybe that's just secretary, and maybe there's no sexual relations there, but that's a little irrelevant. But the point I'm getting at is there seems to be a bit of a discrepancy in the timeline, because her joining them would have been after this Evelyn girl was murdered, her head's dashed up on the rocks, and it doesn't seem like that's actually the timeline there. It seems like she got hired a long time ago, and then that happened. And so maybe I'm totally wrong there, but that feels like it doesn't fit exactly. Again, it's also one of those things that you're not supposed to think about it. Just don't think about it. Just enjoy the movie. Just turn your brain off and enjoy the movie. Well, giallo films are they always feel like they're a little smarter, and so when they do something that feels like they're dropping the ball and there's a plot hole or something, it just stands out a little bit more than if this were a slasher film. But yeah, it's still good, and it is a really good twist and reveal, but it just feels a little extra. It just feels like a few more stuff than we really needed. But I don't hate the movie, and I still would say that this is like A or S tier even. So yes, I do like it. Let's segue to the GialliTally cliches for this movie. Post-giallo viewing cliches. The reason for the killing. I don't have a category for Rosemary being drugged and carrying out the killings, so I will default to Franziska, whose motive is greed and gain, but this is overshadowed by her psychopathy and obsession. 7 points. The reason for the investigation. Now, we do have a police investigator. However, Martin does solve the mystery, so suspect proving their innocence. 10 points. And for him being an amateur sleuth, add 5 points. Bonus points. The style bonus. We have a good amount of stylistic tropes here. We have some first-person POVs, some slow motion, I think, a lot of insert shots, some double exposure, a kaleidoscopic shot, slow zooms both in and out, crash zooms, and a mirror shot here. Out of a maximum of 25 points possible, I will give the Red Queen kills 7 times 18 points for its style bonus. Soundtrack.
Easy. Go easy with that wheel.
Hell yes. 15 points. Bad effects. Yes. We have at least 4 fake bodies, and even though the effects are not terrible, and they do a good job of hiding the fake bodies, I won't give it full points. 13 points. Final look. Extra points. The Deadpool, tallying how many kills and deaths are featured in the film. I break it down as thus: 10 points per kill or death scene for the main Deadpool, plus any stylistic kill multipliers, which we didn't add yet, plus the knife kill bonus. We have Tobias Wildenbrück, heart attack, 10 points. Hans Mayer, impaled with a knife, 21 points. Lenora, impaled with a knife, 21 points. Elizabeth Hoffmann, impaled on a spike, 16 points. Peter, vehicular, 19 points. Lulu Palm, shot dead, 10 points. Rosemary Müller, impaled with a knife, 21 points. Evelyn Wildenbrück, bludgeoned, 15 points. Franziska Zieler-Wildenbrück, shot dead, 10 points. And Herbert Zieler, drowned, 14 points. Red herrings for the total number of legitimate suspects in the film. 5 points per legit suspect are awarded. We have Kitty, Franziska, Herbert, Peter, Martin, Lulu, and Rosemary. 35 points for red herrings. Flashback sequences, 5 points each. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. 65 points for flashbacks. Nudity, I award 5 points for ass, 7 for breasts, and 10 for genitalia. We have breasts, breasts, breasts and ass, breasts, 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 and breasts. 54 points for nudity. Ladies and gentlemen, for The Red Queen Kills 7 Times, I awarded the film an AZ score of 19 out of 26. With the bonus points for these, we have a modified score total of 150 points. And for the full GialliTally score, I award The Red Queen Kills 7 Times a GialliTally score of 769 points. Compared to Short Night of Glass Dolls in first with 969 points, What Have You Done to Solange in second with 933 points, and Your Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Have the Key in third with 847 points, The Red Queen Kills 7 Times is in 9th place. I predicted around 675 to 725 points, so yeah, I was pretty damn close. But like I say, these points do not mean a movie is better or worse. Please like this video, share it with your friends if they are horror fans or cinephiles, subscribe to The King in Giallo if you haven't yet, and if you have any questions, thoughts, curiosities, or concerns, leave those below in the comment section and I will get back to you. Give The King in Giallo a follow on Instagram and a like on Facebook. Subscribe to The King in Giallo Patreon to see early access to the YouTube videos, exclusive video series, and to generally support what I do. Next time on The King in Giallo will be the overview, review, and GialliTally for the first Giallo film directed by Roberto Bianchi Montero, So Sweet, So Dead, released on August 11th, 1972. Thank you very much for your continued support, and a special thank you to those who support me on Patreon. This is Tanner Leeser for The King in Giallo, and if nothing else, I'll see you next time.